So what do you do beside getting interviewed like me?
Well, this is always a challenge for me, because when people ask me what I do, and with AI, you can just do so much. And so one of the things we'll be talking about today is sort of picking what to talk about. But I grew up in New York, that's why I have this accent. I worked in Silicon Valley for a while, came to Hong Kong in '08, and that was right before the great financial crisis. And then worked for American software vendors here, and then in 2023, I talk about a midlife crisis AI in the first episode. And so 2023, my dad dies, I get laid off, and then I try to figure out what I try to do in my life, and that starts my exploration with I-Ching. And so we'll talk maybe a little bit about that. Yeah.
So you do a lot of consultancy, but in your spare time you use AI to learn I-Ching.
That's right. So I maybe we'll get to talk about surgical software, which is a new style of software development. But the way I do software development is quite different than how Alex does it. So I like my hammer. My hammer is Claude Code right now, and I tailor it. I make sure the handle's really smooth, and so on. So my style of development is just focused on a single tool, getting the max efficiency out of that, and Alex has his max. One of the things I wanted to bring up was this concept of pareto optimal. Well, it's just 80-20 rule. Okay, so basically, what is the 20% of effort that I need to expend to get the 80% of benefit? And I think in this example, it's, hey, Google Maps enrichment for your users in the chat window. That's relatively easy, but what a delightful user experience that would be. Whereas the other thing was sort of like there's really a lot of unknowns in that sort of billing thing, that's sort of like infrastructure, and maybe you want it because, and this is the thing, like we're entrepreneurs, so we want to focus on collecting money, obviously, and so we focus on that maybe as our instinct, but maybe we also need to balance that with what users want. All I can say is, this actually goes back to just standard software rollouts. I think it's very hard to measure ROI in reality, and so the way I like to think about things, especially with AI, is we should think about rolling out AI in terms of capability rather than functionality. And so it's a little bit woo and a little bit philosophical, but I feel like you really want the individual departments, because these agentic tools are so powerful, you actually want to enable them to do a lot of the self-service and maybe even the development. The tools aren't there yet. But they will get there, so we sort of need to shoot where things are going. That's sort of my perspective. But I also have another thing to talk about research.
So what you mean is in the past, like for a lot of corporate software, is actually that employee have to adapt to one standardization. But what you're telling me is that with this kind of surgical approach, that maybe is more customizable.
Yeah. So Forrester, there's a Forrester article recently talking about an AI thinkers member where they rolled out something very efficiently using agentic tools like a custom HR system in 2 days. So you can actually develop code very quickly and adapt it very quickly with the state of the tools. And so you can have the software adapt to the users rather than the other way around, which is like what you've seen in SAP. I wanted to follow on Alex's point about domain expertise. So mine is a bit of a meta domain expertise just because I've seen so many software deployments. So for me, it was about methodology in terms of how to deploy a piece of what I call surgical software. And
can you explain a little bit more on this?
It's a lot of, it starts with basics. It's actually a lot of requirements gathering. It starts off, well, I'm just me myself, so I use a lot of WhatsApp audio. I record, I get the critical spreadsheets, and before I write any piece of code, I do extensive transcriptions and shaping of the requirements. Then I have a very sort of intensive, maybe not as intensive as Alex's plan building, but you build a very expensive plan, and then once you do that, my design philosophy is I always add AI at the end. So I like to make sure that my data bones and my data model and my user flow are sensible and simple before adding any communication maybe, but you're doing some kind of judgment. And that's one of the tricky things with something like taste, is it's sort of like
What do you mean by taste?
Well, by definition, it's hard to describe, right? And that's why maybe...
And I wear like really good fashion bags.
Exactly. Like, well, I don't know what it is.
So it, like, you mean, like, that is terrible. Because you said, hey, in order to build good software, I need good taste.
I don't want to make it sound elitist. I do think we might need to go back to an apprentice-master kind of apprenticeship. Meaning we need to learn things maybe more by observation and sort of subtle cues like that. If you wanted to watch maybe Alexander do his planning session, someone might be able to get a lot out of that rather than Alex trying to exhaustively describe every single step, right? Mm-hmm.